Tonight, a special edition of our show. 1 year since the Hamas attack on Israel. We will show you how the atrocities played out in real time and how many in the media got it wrong. Plus, we're on the ground in Israel to see what life has been like there for Israelis 1 year into the war. And the hostages, pulled from their homes, ripped from their lives, we'll hear from them in their own words. But first, Monday marks 1 year since the Hamas terror attack on Israel. So tonight, we're going to take you back through the media reports, which at first failed to convey the full horror of what was happening on the ground. Couple that with the video we now have of the atrocities playing out in real time. It paints a sort of stark picture of what we knew then versus what we now know was unfolding. Now, a reminder, what happened was horrific, so some of what we are about to show you will be difficult to watch.
The Israeli military has declared a state of war alert and is mobilizing its forces following this morning's unprecedented rocket attacks from Gaza.
We are announcing an operation called Al-Aqsa Floods.
Israeli officials say there are multiple injuries, some of them serious, and at least one fatality. In addition, the Israeli military is warning that a number of militants have infiltrated Israeli territory from Gaza.
Israel has sent special forces down to the south to try to essentially kill these militants. There are estimated to be 50 or 60 of them.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
On that day, Hamas delivered death on paragliders. As seen in this exclusive video obtained by CNN, Hamas militants landed here in Netiv HaSara.
Groups of Palestinian militants crossed the border on motorcycles and in pickup trucks. They went straight to small border communities where they reportedly committed massacres. They also went to a music festival where they opened fire on attendees.
There was a festival, a nature and music festival going on not far from the border that militants attacked. And so there's a fear of a number of wounded and dead as a result of that as well.
posted on social media appear to show uniformed gunmen inside the Israeli border town of Sderot. Residents across the region are being ordered to remain indoors.
There are hostage situations inside Israeli territory, and now Hamas, and this has been partly confirmed by the Israeli Defense Forces, is claiming that it has taken hostages into Gaza, possibly dozens of them.
Are you saying that these men who infiltrated Israel proper have taken hostages?
According to what I know, yes, they did.
What we don't know about the possible hostages, how many, who exactly, is it civilians, is it Israeli troops, who exactly has been taken back across the border into the Gaza Strip?
Some Israelis, whether they are soldiers or civilians, may have been captured and taken back into Gaza.
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it.
The world is watching. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop.
Was this indeed an intelligence failure? How on earth did something like this happen?
This is unlike anything we have seen in the past 50 years. The events we have witnessed in the past 24 hours and that are ongoing as we speak will change the world. The rules have completely changed.
All right, so that is what happened, and we've heard a lot about how we got here. But now we want to take you on the ground there in Israel, where everyone is waiting to see how the Israeli government responds to Iran's attack earlier this week. NewsNation foreign correspondent Robert Sherman is on the ground in Haifa. Robert, give us a sense of what life is like there for Israelis.
I would say this, Dan. October 7th happened a year ago. Days, weeks, months have gone by. But it's still not October 8th for many people all throughout this country. It is such an uncertain time here. And in many cases, it feels as though that time has stood still and that healing process has not really happened, even an entire 1 year later. And I say it's an uncertain time because here today, there are still tens of thousands of Israelis displaced in the north. Just today, sirens were going off in southern Israel, and there's this cloud that is hanging over this whole country right now about what happens with Iran. How do the Israelis respond, and what would Iran's response potentially in turn look like? People just don't know exactly where we're going from here, Dan.
Day to day, are people going to school and going to work and living their everyday lives?
In some aspects, yes, Dan, especially in cities such as Tel Aviv, for example. But it's a holiday here in Israel right now, and I just can't even begin to articulate how quiet things have been on the ground here, particularly in northern Israel. You don't have as many people going out. It doesn't feel festive like we have seen in the past before. Again, it is just this cloud of uncertainty that people don't know where things are heading.
And what about security? Is there enhanced security, even, for example, in a city like Haifa?
Without question. And you don't have to go far in order to find IDF troops on the ground. You don't have to go far to remember that this is all an active conflict zone right now. And if that weren't even enough, the sounds of shelling that you hear in the distance, it has been constant throughout the day here, Dan. I mean, multiple times here in Haifa, we've seen people running into shelters, the sirens going off here. Not for a moment can you escape that harsh reality.
Robert Sherman, thank you for all your work on the ground there. Stay safe. Appreciate your time. Still ahead, a look inside the intricate miles-long network of tunnels underneath Gaza, a network built by terrorists providing hideouts, storage for bombs. So how effective has Israel been in dismantling the tunnels? How much more remains? Plus, we'll take a look back at the media coverage from October 7th and how much the media got wrong. With Iran's attack earlier this week, Israel is now in a three-front war with Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and now with an enemy 1,500 miles away in Iran. But there's also the public relations war. And in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, before Israel even went into Gaza, the writing was on the wall as to who was going to be blamed, particularly from some in the left-leaning media. So we take a look back at the coverage on MSNBC from that day after they first learned of the attacks. The hosts, Ayman Mohyeddin and Ali Velshi, go back and forth regarding Israel's, quote, provocation must have led to Hamas's actions on October 7th. And keep in mind, while they did not have all of the details at this point, this was after the initial reports of gunmen opening fire at a music festival.
Hamas is saying, well, if nobody is able to defend what is happening for Palestinians in the West Bank or in East Jerusalem with the home demolitions, the arrests, the children being killed, the desecration of holy sites, if they're unable to do that, then we only have the ability to do it with military might.
Many of these Palestinians who are being, as Ayman said, systematically harassed, having their homes demolished, harassed by settlers under the eye and guise and with the support of Israeli defense forces. So this is not out of the blue what we have seen this morning.
That was on October 7th, while bodies were still being identified and Israeli officials were trying to determine who was dead and who was kidnapped. While parents were trying to get in touch with their children who were at the music festival. Israel already being blamed. And it's that bias against Israel that would lead to the type of sort of dangerous, sloppy reporting we saw 10 days later. After Israel's counteroffensive in Gaza had begun, there was an explosion at Al-Ali Hospital in Gaza. And while Israeli officials were still calculating the death count of their civilians on October 7th, 10 days earlier, the Hamas-run Palestinian Health Ministry seemingly needed only minutes to report that 500 were killed in an Israeli attack on the hospital. And many in the media, including the New York Times and Washington Post, bought the story hook, line, and sinker. And they weren't the only ones.
As you can see, people are still reeling there in the aftermath of what's believed to be an Israeli airstrike on a hospital.
It's hard to see what else this could be, really, given the size of the explosion, other than an Israeli airstrike or several airstrikes.
Except with time and proper investigation, both things every media outlet should utilize, it was determined that it was not only not Israel fired the rocket, but rather a misfired rocket within Gaza launched by the terror group Islamic Jihad. But also that the death count was most likely less than half the reported 500. Several outlets were forced to backtrack.
The conclusion of U.S. intelligence that it was a misfired Palestinian rocket, not the Israelis, that caused the explosion at the Gaza hospital on Tuesday.
Now, we've shown these images to a number of weapons experts, and while they couldn't come to a firm conclusion, several of them told us that if the explosion had been caused by the type of bomb normally used by Israeli forces, the crater would have been bigger and there would have been more damage to the buildings.
That's about as big a backtrack as you're going to get from them. That was the BBC, of course, in the last clip. The same media outlet that wouldn't even refer to Hamas as a terror group Same BBC that back in November ran with a claim from the Gaza Health Ministry that the Israeli army was summarily executing Palestinian civilians.
As its forces are carrying out an operation against Hamas in Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, and they are targeting people, including medical teams as well as Arab speakers.
So the prestigious British Broadcasting Corporation took the word of Hamas, an organization officially recognized by the UK and others as a terror group. Well, they learned the hard way that was probably a bad idea and had to issue an apology.
The BBC News, as it covered initial reports that Israeli forces has entered Gaza's main hospital, we said that medical teams and Arab speakers were being targeted. This was incorrect and misquoted a Reuters report. We should have said IDF forces included medical teams and Arabic speakers for this operation. So we apologize for this error.
So the IDF wasn't targeting medical staff and Arabic speakers inside a Gaza hospital. Turns out that the IDF had with them medical staff and Arabic speakers, presumably to assist injured Gazans. But almost all of these mistakes have one thing in common. They accepted the word of the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. And no matter how many times that source turns out to be wrong, the media, many in the media, have still been running with it as a source for a year now.
Gaza's health ministry says more than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 7th.
In Gaza, 67 people were killed overnight, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health.
The Palestinian Health Ministry is saying the Al-Ahli hospital, which is in Gaza City in the northern half of Gaza, took a direct strike from an Israeli aircraft. They are saying at minimum hundreds of people are dead.
Look, some of what comes from the Gaza Health Ministry is accurate, and there is no doubt that too many civilians have been killed in Gaza. But it's also a fact that the Hamas-run Palestinian Health Ministry does not distinguish between civilians and terrorists when citing death tolls. Yet the mainstream media is all too quick to relay those numbers, often without pointing that out. Joining us now is Martin Fletcher, former Middle East correspondent and Tel Aviv bureau chief for NBC News, where he worked for over 30 years. Martin, good to see you again. So first, take us big picture here, right? You covered this region for 30 years. This isn't easy. How do the best of the reporters avoid the sort of bias and mistakes that we saw here?
Well, let me first say, Dan, that watching the clips you've been showing, my personal reaction is that it's painful to watch, and some of it is simply shameful. I mean, the reporting is shameful. How do we avoid it? Look, what else are you going to do? You've got to quote somebody. The only source that exists in Gaza on October 7, 8, 9, 10, and even still today is the Ministry of Health. There are no numbers, other numbers coming out of there. So journalists have to quote those numbers, but they should be much more careful about how they quote them and putting them in context. I mean, in the beginning, the journalists talked about the Gaza Ministry of Health. Then, under the weight of humongous criticism, they started referring to them as the Hamas-run Ministry of Health. So that's a step in the right direction. But for most viewers, it's lost, isn't it? It's lost that differentiation. So the damage is done.
And look, to be fair, very often they do provide information that is accurate. The problem, it seems to me, is that they mix it in with information that is inaccurate, which makes it that much harder for the media to assess what's true and what's not.
Well, that's right. And also the claims by the Ministry of Health in Gaza are almost always backed up by the reporting from Palestinian journalists in Gaza, many of whom work for the foreign media. So that's part of the problem. And when the hospital attack you mentioned earlier, another quotation from a Palestinian journalist who was in the hospital 1 hour after the attack. He told the doctors in the hospital, and he was quoted later by the United Nations. He said, it was hard to walk. There were so many severed limbs lying around. There was mostly women and children. It's completely, as it turns out, untrue. So the claims by the Ministry of Health in Gaza, the Hamas-run ministry, exaggerated, false, true. We just have no real way of knowing. So that's the job of the journalists on the ground, to be a voice of reason and truth. And not in all cases are we getting that.
When you were in the region covering the conflict, and the conflict has been ongoing, did you get a lot of pressure, complaints about bias from one side or the other?
Oh, that was from both sides all the time. I've got to say, mostly from the American Jewish side, but that's only because they focus much more closely on the media. So we got a lot of complaints about bias. But you know, bias is a difficult thing to define. And one of the ways of defining is, does the action on the ground fit the narrative, fit the accepted story? And in many cases, it doesn't. So then how do you report that? And one good example of that, now that Israeli troops have entered South Lebanon, again, for the third time in about 22 years. In 1982, going back a long way, after 3 days, the Lebanese Red Crescent, the Red Cross of Lebanon, announced formally that 10,000 Lebanese had been killed in 3 days by Israeli troops. And we were on the ground in South Lebanon. We said, where are they? Where are all the dead bodies? And one NBC News reporter was reporting that and other things. And the shows in New York didn't want to publish those numbers. It then turned out that the brother of Yasser Arafat was the head of the Palestinian Red Crescent. So that exaggerated claim of 10,000 dead in 3 days came from the brother of the head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. It's completely untrue. We found no evidence of it, but that was a number that was accepted worldwide because it came from such a credible source, allegedly credible source.
This is why we need more reporters like Martin Fletcher covering this story. Martin, good to see you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Dan.
Still ahead, a look at the massive complex of tunnels, a network built underground by Hamas terrorists. How effective has Israel been so far in dismantling them? How many more remain? This as we continue our special looking back at October 7th, 1 year later. The massive complex of tunnels and hideouts underneath Gaza connects buildings and has provided hideouts and storage for guns and bombs and other implements of Hamas terror. Last month, the IDF released documents found in Gaza that outline in detail Hamas's extensive training on how to find, use, and fight in what some have called the Gaza Metro. Hundreds of miles of passageways, access shafts, bunkers, a web under Gaza where attacks could be launched and hostages could be concealed for months. Among the documents recovered by the IDF, a letter signed by Hamas's leader, Yahya Sinwar, approving more funds for major upgrades, including armored doors, barriers, booby traps, a master plan for underground warfare using massive amounts of money and supplies in order to continue the attack on Israel. Over the course of the last year, the IDF has destroyed much of that network using specifically designed bombs, but even so, many still remain, and Hamas and now Hezbollah in Lebanon continue to launch attacks from hiding spots below ground using hit-and-run tactics and ambushes before using the tunnels as escape routes. Freed hostage Aviva Siegel described the nightmarish conditions in the tunnel where she was held for 51 days, and others, including her husband, may still remain a year later. Just a few weeks ago, the IDF released video of the tunnel where 6 hostages were executed, the entrance to which was through a child's bedroom.
The tunnel shaft was in a children's room, in a house. Those are the walls of this children's room with Snow White and Mickey Mouse on the wall, and a tunnel shaft where hostages were murdered downstairs, 20 meters below the ground.
Hamas used those letters in the tunnel, and there was a hiding floor. All he needed to do is to break the floor and then go out through the children's room, inside to the street, and go back into the tunnel. This is how Hamas built this tunnel.
The shaft goes down about 20 meters into the ground, using 4 separate ladders. There, it connects to a narrow tunnel with no rooms that is so low you can't stand up straight in it. The tunnel is about 120 meters long and ends in a blocked iron door. This short blocked part of the tunnel is where the hostages were held and murdered.
They were heroes, and they were here in this tunnel for weeks or days, we will find out. But they were here in this tunnel in horrific conditions, where there is no air to breathe, where you cannot stand.
Amazing. We're going to hear more from hostages in their own words later in the show. But the question for now is, how effective has Israel been so far in dismantling the tunnels? How many more remain? Apparently Hamas is still using them. Joining us now, an expert on the tunnel network, retired Lieutenant General Mark Schwarz. He ran U.S. security coordination in Israel and the Palestinian Authority from 2019 through 2021. He's now a senior fellow at the RAND Corporation. Thanks very much for coming on. Appreciate it. All right, so obviously we don't know exactly how many of the tunnels remain, but it is clear, A, that Israel has destroyed a lot of them, and B, that a lot of them still exist.
Yeah, Dan, great to be with you. I think you did a great job, just kind of setting the scene of the complexity and the extensive network of the metro that does exist underneath Gaza. And, that last footage of where the, unfortunately, 6 Israeli hostages were killed just gives you, an idea of the sophistication that has gone on since 2006 when Hamas took control of Gaza and built this underground network to support the defense of Gaza and obviously to be used for holding individuals in captivity.
And they used international aid, I assume, to build this, correct?
They did. They also were, they being Hamas, were extremely successful in undermining or going around the restrictions in terms of material that's allowed into Gaza. But as you can see, it's concrete, it's rebar, everything that's every material that's needed to build, buildings above ground is being used. And so it's hard because most of the materials are in fact dual use.
Now, look, you're someone who follows this. This is, what you did for a while. But now that we have a better sense of the scope of it, are you surprised by how extensive the tunnels are or were, or is this kind of what you knew existed already?
I am surprised. I had the opportunity to work with the IDF when I was serving in active military, to include going to their training centers that have underground complexes that replicate what they found in southern Lebanon and certainly in Gaza. But to the extent, when I heard about the metro and hundreds of miles, I'm like, well, I don't know if it's that big, but it's probably significant. And clearly, I think the IDF is also been a bit surprised in terms of the extensive network and the complexity by which Hamas was able to construct these tunnels over the course of the last, 18 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So you think that Israel didn't know how extensive they were?
They certainly had an assessment, based on, the intelligence that they've gathered, and they have some of the most exquisite human intelligence inside of Gaza prior to October 7th, and they still have, connectivity with some reporting coming out of Gaza as well. But I think, I don't know how they could not be, a little bit surprised at the extensive network that they've come across. And the good thing, I guess, is that they've had an extensive amount of practice on how to navigate and reduce these tunnels over the course of the war since October 7th. But given the fact that the priority of combat operations have now shifted to southern Lebanon, you don't have the physical IDF combat presence inside of Gaza right now to continue to identify, locate, and then exploit this tunnel complex. So I think it's going to be many more months before we have a good understanding, as you said early on, of the exact, extensive network that exists underneath Gaza.
It sounds like there is some of this in Lebanon as well.
Absolutely. In fact, there's, just in recent days since the limited offensive began in northern Israel, southern Lebanon, the IDF have uncovered several tunnels. Some of those, even before this ongoing operation, some of those tunnels went into sovereign Israeli territory, which were found during a major operation a few years ago. But they're clearly finding tunnels throughout the course of their ground operations that they started in earnest about 6 days ago now.
Yeah. All right. Mark Schwarz, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
I have to admit, that was the first time I had seen the video put out by the IDF about exactly how those tunnels had worked in the area where the entrance came in from the children's bedroom, etc. It is really just important to understand. It is frightening and fascinating, but critical for people to realize exactly what has been happening there. Still ahead, we'll hear from the hostages themselves, in their own words, as we continue our hour-long special looking back at the October 7th attack 1 year later. Coming right back.
I was twice in a tunnel. One of the times they took us down to a tunnel that was very, very dark. I could hardly see my next step. And they took us to a small little place and they just left us there because there was no oxygen. And they couldn't feel that there was oxygen for them, and they just left us. They went up ground, and they left us there with no water and no food. And when they came after a couple of days, we were nearly dead.
More than 240 people pulled from their homes, from their cars, from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th and taken hostage by Hamas. Tonight, as we look back at October 7th, a year later, we want to present them to you in their own words. Some have been killed, others released in hostage deals, a few others have been rescued. But at least 97 hostages remain in Gaza. Judith Runnan and her daughter Natalie were held hostage for 2 weeks. They were the first to be released. Judith spoke to NewsNation about what happened to her.
We heard gunfire. We did not hear any planes above us. We only heard shots from far away. Mm-hmm. And then until I heard some Arabic, and I understood that I have 2 minutes to explain to my daughter what is about to happen, and I did.
What did you say?
Well, I simply said, honey, do you remember how you see in the movies, those guys that have all this military artillery and stuff? They come with guns and all. So that's what's gonna come through the door, so don't panic.
You told your daughter not to be afraid. Did that work?
Not to panic, because I knew that panic is really not suitable for this situation. If you panic, you can be shot. And the best thing is to see what's next.
What happened next?
Well, 2 guys came in with full artillery, very frightening, very big weapons, with a big bomb in the size of, I'm not good with cars, like the car battery, mm-hmm. You know, that box, that black box.
Right.
They had all kind of stuff in their vest, and they had a special hat, and they had a full artillery, very well equipped. They did say, we're not going to kill you.
Did they all have masks on their faces, or were they showing you their faces?
They had masks and some didn't. I don't recall anymore. He kept on threatening with a gun to see if there was anybody in the room, although it was a very tiny room, and he was yelling that. And I was with my pajama, and my girl was afraid. She said, Mom, I'm afraid to be raped.
But there were many, many others. Now, here now some of the other hostages who were freed in their own words, and obviously, some of this may be difficult to hear.
I was in Gaza for 51 days.
I was in captivity for 54 days.
הוחזקתי בשבי 51 ימים.
הייתי 55 ימים בשבי החמאס.
I was kidnapped to Gaza on the 7th of October. I was in Hamas captivity for 8 months before being rescued by the security forces on June 8th.
I played dead, but holding my breath was next to impossible. So they said, no, she's not dead. There's no blood. So pick her up. And they grabbed my arms and started dragging me on the ground towards back to the car. I was in pajamas, and my clothes tried to swipe off my body, and it was one of the most frightening moments, because my thoughts were, even if they didn't have that intention, now they might have, and I'm half naked, so...
You're worried about rape?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was worried to get raped.
Yeah, of course.
And fortunately enough, they didn't do it. The goal was get me into Gaza. My kidnappers could not help themselves showing me off as a trophy and showing my face as an object. I was not a person.
But the windows were up, right? No one could reach.
No, they were not up. There were a lot of people around, and as we...
Yelling and...
Yeah, partying.
2,000 feet over. 2,000 over.
One guy, he was like, I was really scared about him. I was really afraid. And he took fabric from my eyes and showed me with signs, like, tomorrow, I will film you, and I will kill you. It was in the first day of our being in Gaza.
Your mom said that you were tied up like that for 2 months.
The first 3 days was with ropes. Until middle of December, we were in chains.
Every time we talked about it, at least one of the people said that they had suffered sexual and physical abuse. About half of them. And I haven't talked to all of the girls that are there. I talked to one of them one evening, and I asked her how they had treated her, what she had been through. She started crying, and I cried with her. We were crying together, and then they started telling me. He told her on the last day she was being moved to a different place. She was staying in an apartment with one guard. He told her that they have to move. Go get ready. Go wash yourself at the sink. She went into the bathroom and washed her armpit, and then he came into the bathroom and held a gun to her head. He started kissing her, and she started crying. She told me, you know when you cry your mouth is like this? This is what it was like, but he wouldn't stop kissing me. He took off all her clothes and touched her all over her body.
I didn't see daylight for 54 days. I also didn't move, so I was barely walking. My legs were shaking.
Were you able to sleep there?
Maybe for an hour. You can't really sleep when a Hamas terrorist is sitting and staring at you.
People very good, very kind to me. Food good and
the kindness and everything.
Tell that. You know you're seconds away from going back home, and a Hamas terrorist is shoving a camera in your face. He told me, say the people of Gaza are nice. Say good things. What can I say? You're crap?
I still have triggers to deal with every single day. I'm being scared of being by myself. I was really independent, and I'm trying to regain it.
Still, nearly 1 year later, so many of them still are not home. My final thought on the October 7th attack 1 year later.
Was October 7th a strategic mistake?
For us, after 1 year after October 7th, we consider October 7th as a strategic achievement.
A strategic achievement. Everything has to be viewed through that prism as we look back on October 7th. There's a right and there's a wrong. There's an aggressor and there's a victim. Israel was attacked on October 7th. Innocent civilians are still being held hostage in Israel. That doesn't mean we can't discuss and debate the extent of Israel's response. We should, we must. But that doesn't change the fundamentals here. And that is, Israel was attacked, Israel was the victim, and they have responded. We're going to continue to follow this story well past the 1 year anniversary, and we're going to continue to do it in a thoughtful way, where we do ask tough questions of the Israelis as well. But we can never forget about how this all started. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.